in Ghana, technicians or engineers? How many of you are willing to work in the foreign service and spend your lives traveling around the world? On your willingness to do that, not merely to serve 1 year or 2 years in the service, but on your willingness to contribute part of your life to this country, I think will depend the answer whether a free society can compete. I think it can, and I think Americans are willing to contribute, but the effort must be far greater than we've ever made in the past.
Winnie King was a senior civil servant and worked in the office of the Prime Minister. And he apparently heard over the radio, you know, of the President's address, and indicating either to the world or to whoever he was addressing the intention of having a group of Americans form as a Peace Corps to help in the development needs of countries overseas. He mentioned this to the Prime Minister, who was John Compton, and suggested that he should write and ask that a request be made, you know, for a group to come to Saint Lucia. And that was the first group that came to the Caribbean, strange enough. You know, the President of the United States took very warmly to that kind of request and acted on it almost immediately. I recall that they were due to arrive here on a Sunday, and two of us went to, as it were, escort them.
The front page headlines of The Voice of that era will bear that out. For instance, there's this one on the eve of their arrival, which you can get a sense of anticipation from. Peace Corps arrives tomorrow. That was on the 14th of October 1961. They arrived on Sunday the 15th. And then after they'd been here a week, we have this one, Peace Corps welcomed in Saint Lucia. Again, one senses the warmth in the headline. And then they went on every week, perhaps not front page billing, but there was a section of The Voice devoted to Peace Corps news.
I was quite impressed by them because, of course, we had information on their background, on their knowledge, on where they went to, etc., etc. So then, when we looked at the group that were assigned to Saint Lucia, you know, especially in the education field.
My group was brought here for only one reason, and that was to work with a brand new teacher training system. The Ministry of Education, before the arrival of my group, were only were able to train teachers through what they called a pupil teacher system. So all of these young people would leave primary school and then start teaching in primary school and take all of their education, all of their high school classes by correspondence from Castries. So if they didn't live in Castries itself, they had no teachers for themselves. They had to study algebra, geometry, arithmetic, history, biology, English language, English lit, in order to pass exams so that they could go up through the pupil teacher system until they were qualified enough to do, in those days, GCEs, and then they could go on to higher education if in fact they got that far, and that would take about 7 years. So we were here too in each village to teach those after-school classes to those teachers. In other words, to teach them their high school subjects.
The Peace Corps volunteers helped teachers a long way, because at that time they introduced new maths, which I did not learn in school during my time. And they used to teach you how to teach children to write within lines so that they will know how to write the top letters and the bottom letters. And in fact, phonics had a very great, the program of phonics was introduced with the teachers, because we didn't learn that much at school.
I worked at the Ministry of Education at the time as what we called a supervising teacher. And it was there were 3 or 4 Peace Corps volunteers who worked with the ministry in the field of teacher training. What that did was we went out to the schools all over the island, especially the weekends. Every Friday, supervising teachers would go out to the primary schools where the teachers were, and you would observe them at work, give ideas and so on.
The fact that Peace Corps has been involved in Saint Lucia over many years has impacted very positively on our society generally. In particular, where ancillary my community is concerned, I think we have everything to be thankful for Peace Corps. As early as the 1960s, say about 63, 64, we had our first encounter with Peace Corps in ancillary. And at that time, I was still a student of the ancillary primary school.
What is interesting is that some of the early boys, they were not actually my students because they were already PA2s at the time. That's after your 7 years. George Ford, who was principal of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, Gaspar Charlemagne, who was Deputy Director of Culture in the ministry, Johnson Snack, another very, very big name in education, Marius Felix, who I'm not sure he's retired, but up to the last time I knew, he was still principal of the Soufriere Secondary School. All of these boys were there in Soufriere and were part of the Soufriere education system and came up through the pupil-teacher system and became very important in the society. So in those days, those are the kids who really mattered.
We had some very good projects. One was the blood bank project, where the whole purpose of the project was to improve the quality of the blood and also to increase the quantity of blood collected.
We actually had 3 Peace Corps volunteers who helped us in the early stages of the blood bank. What we were trying to do actually, and maybe I should put this in context for you, many years ago, our blood supply was really very precarious. We really didn't have much blood. We were constantly cancelling operations. We were constantly short of blood. The Peace Corps became very interested in what we were doing, and we approached Peace Corps, in fact. And together we came up with this proposal where we would have 3 Peace Corps volunteers over a period of 6 years. And they would address really 3 main areas. The first volunteer was looking at the whole aspect of blood bank management. Then we had a second volunteer who was really looking at the procedures and the way in which we handled donors and handled blood services. Our last Peace Corps volunteer in the blood bank was a marketing person. And what we were looking at there was how we could develop better marketing strategies for donor recruitment in particular, but of course even for the public relations of the blood bank. So those 3 volunteers actually, I think, allowed us to create the blood bank service that we now operate.
One of the main projects I remember was special ed. They were working towards putting together an assessment tool so that teachers who were trained in special ed would take that tool and go to the different schools and try to identify kids in the normal classes who needed, that intervention as far as special ed was concerned. There were also other things like sports, and there was somebody in Choiseul who was doing work with the craft people. There was somebody doing work with the fishermen in Labrie, little projects like that.
Another project was a project for persons with disabilities. It was an extremely good project where teachers worked together with the Peace Corps to develop the project, and a number of things happened as a result.
We embarked on a major sensitization drive where a group of blind vision impaired persons, with the help of volunteers and sighted associates, including 7 Peace Corps volunteers, we walked around the island and slept in the villages, fed by the people. We certainly we catch them wherever we could have found them, whether it was in the rum shop or wherever they were. Play dominoes with them, talk to them, force them to encounter blind people in real life. And that it was an effort to try and dispel the perception that blindness was the end of the world and the end of life.
I was expecting that I would be sent to a developing country, and Saint Lucia is that, and still lacking in many ways. But I quickly noticed that there were a lot of things about the island that I thought were better than places that I'd lived in the United States. For example, there seemed to be a stronger community spirit, especially in the village that I lived in, Labrie. I was assigned to be a woodworking instructor at a primary school in the village of Labrie as part of a program called 13+. My experience in Saint Lucia has had a huge impact on me as an artist. In fact, it's really defined me and defined my work. Before I came there, I had really given up painting, or at least stopped because of a lack of inspiration. But immediately after getting there, I sent for my art supplies because everywhere I looked was something I wanted to paint.
Peace Corps gave all of us this little this sort of a cardboard locker about this big and that wide, and you opened it up and here were all these paperbacks. And we put that out on our balcony, and every afternoon the children from the neighborhood would come and we would read, and the teachers would come and we would do lesson plans and things on the table and try to do some posters and try to get them involved in making their classrooms more interesting. And so I think that was one of the best experiences I had.
It's not the expectation that we're going to be here in perpetuity. The goal is that as the Lucian economy evolves and gets more developed, and as the education system in St. Lucia gets more developed over time, we can graduate from St. Lucia. I think of countries like South Korea, where Peace Corps served in the 60s, Brazil, India, Poland after the fall of the Soviet Union. These are now some of the fastest growing economies in the world. My vision for Peace Corps going out 50 years is that we're not here anymore. That the Lucian economy, your tourist-based economy, your natural resource-based economy has evolved and grown to the point where your Lucian people have your own Peace Corps and you're serving other countries in the region that haven't done as well as you have. So our long-term goal is to work ourselves out of a job. I'd like to take this opportunity, though, to thank the people of St. Lucia, the host government, but even more importantly, members of the community for your support of Peace Corps over these 50 years. We really can't do the work that we do in country without the full support of the host country government and local community members. We've learned over the years that the key to being safe in any country in the world is really to be fully integrated in your community. And the local community takes care of our volunteers. So it's really a two-way street.
It's not a wise thing to worry. If you worry, you'll be sorry. Worries love nobody. I say don't worry, feel irate. Yo, it's not a wise thing to worry. It can kill you in a hurry. Worries love nobody. I say don't worry, make merry.